find out. So we're waiting for one more person? And we just start, okay. Digital communities, Farah, Pecha Kucha, Linz.
Yes.
Is it this one? This one? It's a video.
Yeah.
It belongs to you as well.
I want to show it at the end.
Do you want to put it like inside the presentation?
Yeah, that would be good.
I have a few minutes. Oh, that's a long presentation. 60?
It's just pictures.
Yes.
No words. And this is supposed to be 4 minutes. So I should moderate it from here. There's no remote control, right?
I don't think we have one. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
no worries.
And
Okay.
you just start it normally.
Okay.
And the video should start automatically. If it
Okay.
doesn't, just press.
Signal?
Signal?
Ja, schon, aber noch nicht am, du hast es jetzt nur am, musst nur in Ansichtssuch, in Präsentationssuch gehen.
Was war das für Taste?
So does that mean I still have to start the change the slide?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So it's just for the speakers to see. Okay, cool.
Do you have one? Yes.
Okay. Cool. Thanks. So, microphones all on already. Every speaker's here, and this is where we can start this year's Prix Forum Digital Communities, which I want to very welcome you to. I think not many of you will recognize me without my dog. She even got voted to Jury Member of Honor this year, but I think she got lost in Post City somewhere enjoying herself. So my name is Sarah Krische. I'm one of the jury members, and it's my honor to talk to you and dig a bit deeper into the jury's decision this year, which questions we had to ask ourselves when we talk about digital communities and who should get the gold Nica. Also, I want to endorse some projects which we really fell in love with and which you will see outside. I got a bit confused when I arrived here because yesterday this was all an open space with all the projects we had been looking into were there, and I wanted to tell you, look here, look there, here is the projects. Please read through them because they're really great. And now I have to ask you, outside you will see the projects. Please go there, read through them. They're definitely all worth it. And of course, it's my honor to present to you then, some of them are already sitting here, some speakers of the digital communities we voted for as a jury and who won the Golden Nica and the awards of distinction. But first of all, like when we came together as a jury, we faced the same problem as you might face when you look at your neighbor. When you hear the word digital community, every one of you will have like a point of view what a digital community is. And then talk to your neighbor and ask him if he or she shares your point of view, and you will soon find out that there isn't the one definition, this is or this isn't a digital community, or this should or shouldn't be done as a digital community, but there is a broad aspect and variety of things that can be made possible. Just to give you an example, we have hackers, we have makers, we have grassroots movements, we have enablers, as 2 years ago, P2P Foundation won the Golden Nica, who rely on open source software and delivering that to new digital communities who then can evolve. I got a photo that always irritates me, sorry. Who then can evolve without having to rely on Facebook, for example. So. And that's just one of the things that are important when you start as a jury a discussion, what is or what should a digital community do or what shouldn't it do. So I just want to give you 3 aspects which were important to us this year as we came together. One is, it's formed around a social concern. The second point, which was very important to all of us, is it's non-commercial. And the third point is, it might be local, as let's say a grassroots movement, but it also addresses a global challenge that we all have. So what I have here with me is, I said it before, this is 2 sides of projects where I said, like, before coming to our awards of distinction and the winner of the Golden Nica, I really want you to love some of the projects as much as we did, or we do. And I want to just highlight 3 of them. You will find them described outside. One is, for example, MacRock. It's an enabler for communities that have public requests to the US government, so-called FOIA requests, as well as it provides an archive to such requests. So this digital community makes an immensely important and valuable contribution to the preservation and expansion of democratic principles. MacRock can be understood as a role model to create transparency and exchange between citizens, journalists, activists, and of course the government, and to make the world in which we live in more tangible and comprehensible. So this is this part of digital community. So let me give you another example of something, let's to say the Monty Python's words, of something completely different. This would be Radio Garden. Radio Garden allows live access to worldwide radio stations where via you have like a globe interface and you click on one part of the earth, and then you have the live radio program, no matter where you click, as well as an archive of historic radio material that used to be played back then. And third is from China to have like these grassroots movements. Also as an example, it's the Digua community, so-called sweet potato community. Here you have a really courageous project that is built around temporary occupation and squatting in Beijing. So there is unused emergency shelters. And responding to an extensive housing crisis, this project provides shelter in a self-organized community and creates public visibility through projects and events. So a bit of name dropping, so we'll say like, yes, you can find that out there too. Queering the Map, Aboriginal Territories in Cyberspace, P5JS, which many of you hopefully will know, and of course the European Holocaust Research Infrastructure are just one of the wonderful projects that had arrived us, and I would really love you to love as much as we did as a jury. Nevertheless, there's only one Golden Nica this year as well, so you all know, I don't have to make a big secret out of here. It's Bellingcat. I'm already looking at the next speaker, which is my honor to present and to welcome Mr. Eliot Higgins, to give you a bit of an insight what Bellingcat does and is. To us, it was very important and, yeah, somehow great that Bellingcat addresses some issues we face worldwide. It's when we talk about fake news. It's when we talk about distortion. It's when we talk about manipulating pictures or, well, where should we end? With botnets trying to shape someone's view on the world. And Bellingcat Samoa is a project that tries to find answers and also with forensic methods tries to find solutions. So I can't say anything that you can't explain, Mr. Higgins, so please welcome Eliot Higgins, winner of the Golden Nica representing Bellingcat.
Oh, okay. Brilliant. I'm Eliot Higgins. I'm the founder of Bellingcat. I'm just going to start off by explaining some of the basics of what we do with Bellingcat. We have a process which we can break down to 3 stages of identify, verify, and then amplify. So identify could be any kind of thing from finding an interesting tweet about something you want to look into or proactively searching for information that you want to investigate. We then verify it, and there's a whole number of ways we can do that, and I'll be talking about that more shortly, and then amplifying that information. Once we actually have the information, what can we do with it? We can turn it into reports, we can turn it into data sets, we can turn it into art projects. There's a whole wide variety of things we can do once we've verified that information. So one of the most basic techniques we use is something called geolocation. So I'm going to take you through a quick example of what geolocation is. So this is an example from TG in Libya in 2011, where Libyan rebels claimed they had captured a town. This was the first town they had captured in quite a while, and there were claims that this was untrue. So how do we know where this video was filmed? Well, what we do is we start by narrowing down the possible locations it could be. They're claiming it's TG, so we're going to start looking in TG. But what are we looking for in TG? Well, for one thing in the video, there's this very distinct mosque. It's got a minaret. It's got a large dome. There's also, we can see it's next to a road. There's 2 lanes of traffic. There's a divider between it, and it's certainly wide enough to fit a large tank. So we can go to satellite imagery of the town in question on Google Earth, and straight away we can see the road running through the middle of it, so that's our first possible place to look. We can see there's 2 lanes of traffic. We can see how wide the cars are as well, and we can follow that road along until we come to a mosque with a dome and a minaret. And this is similar to what we can see in the video, but that just narrows down the possible location it could be. So we want to start looking at smaller and smaller details. So we start looking at, for example, the curve in the road and the discoloration between the road surface on one side and the other. We see there's a wall there. We can look at even smaller details. We can see the shadows being cast by service pylons and poles. We can see trees, the shapes of building, how they relate to each other. And by looking at all those different elements, we can be absolutely sure where that video was filmed. To give an example of how we use that in a crowdsourcing sense, we're using our community, there was a social media campaign a few years ago by ISIS, and they encouraged their followers on Telegram to post photographs of themselves holding pieces of paper with a hashtag written on it, saying where they were in Europe. And the idea was that ISIS supporters were everywhere in Europe, and they wanted a big kind of media recognition for this and kind of this campaign of fear. I looked at these photographs and I realized that while the first one is definitely impossible to geolocate, if you can geolocate that, I will hire you. The second one is done inside a shop. Obviously, the shelves will change over time, so that's going to be extremely difficult, if not impossible. But the third one, it actually isn't that difficult to do. We have various details that are visible. We can see a bus, so we can tell it's almost certainly on the bus route. It's claimed to be in Munster in Germany, so if they're telling the truth, it might make our life a bit easier. But when these were published, I basically have a large following on Twitter who are really into open source investigation and trying this out themselves. It's like their hobby. It's like the Sudoku they do every evening. So I basically shared this, and someone said, well, you can see an advertising poll there. And there's actually a website in Germany which lists all the advertising locations in Germany. So you can search for Munster, and you can, in fact, select advertising polls, and it will show you all the advertising poll locations in Munster. And what's quite useful about this is the map imagery you have for Munster is this lovely high-resolution aerial imagery. It's not like the usual satellite imagery you get, so you get lots of interesting details. And from that, it's possible to find the location in question. And again, how are we sure it's the location in question? Well, the camera is positioned over here. We can see the advertising pole quite clearly, obviously. But behind that, we can see the railings. We can see the road markings, and we can also see the road markings are in the correct position as well. We can see the lights over the road and the lights on the other side of the road, and lots of other details that allow us to be exactly sure where this photograph was taken. And this is one of 4 photographs from this selection that were geolocatable like this. And because we asked people on the internet, well, I asked simply on Twitter, the community of people who follow our work, out of those 4 photographs, 3 of them, the exact location was found within 10 minutes. And out of one of those photographs, the person who took the photograph actually lied about their location, but it was still discoverable within an hour. So by using crowdsourcing, we can find this information. The thing is, this is a kind of investigation where we have clues in the image that leads us to a location. And there's another project that's been done recently by Europol called Trace an Object, Stop Child Abuse. And it's a campaign they've done with the public where they've asked public to identify objects they've taken out of abuse imagery. So this is a very serious topic. And what they're trying to find out is where these photographs were taken. They have no other information about these photographs, and they're hoping the objects can be used to find it. Now, at Bellingcat, we saw this campaign, and we started using a platform called Check, where you can actually do systematic verification by using a community to examine each object step by step. And by doing that and engaging with a community, we were able to actually identify many of these objects. I think after 1 year, out of about 100 objects, I had identified about 80% of these objects, just from these small fragments and using this community. One of the most strongest examples we have is this photograph. This is a rare one because they show the entire photograph in this image. But this could be any hotel anywhere in the world. And very, very quickly, a businessman said he had been to the same hotel, and the website had a photograph of one of the rooms that, apart from the bed sheets and a little bit of decoration, is exactly the same hotel room. So, and this is in Mauritius. So it's a pretty obscure location for most people, but because this one person saw that photograph and we could crowdsource his answer, we were able to find the location. In this other case study, a BBC journalist who's actually someone we had trained a little earlier, he had come across a colleague who had, his family had moved to the British Virgin Islands. I think it was his sister and their family. And they had moved there just before Hurricane Irma was hitting. And they had shared this video. And this was the last thing they had shared, and then they vanished for 2 days. And this was taken from their new home. The problem is they didn't know where the new home was. And they had lost contact with their family members, and they wanted to know where they were, because the hurricane had hit the islands and they didn't know. So we don't really have that much in this video, as you can see. It's a short video, and it doesn't show too much, but it does actually show enough. So for example, we can see these islands in the background. Now, they have a certain shape to them, a kind of a fingerprint. And you can actually use Google Earth to search through terrain. And what we have here, we can zoom in to part of the British Virgin Islands, and if we place the camera on the ground in Google Earth, you can actually see the terrain. And in the distance, you see a row of islands. And those islands are the same shape as the ones that are visible. But that's not good enough. A digital image isn't good enough. So we use a platform called EchoSec. And EchoSec allows you to search for geotagged photographs and images from social networks. And it just happens someone going down that road had used Flickr, geotagged a photograph they'd taken there of those islands, and I was able to download a lovely high-resolution version of it, and we can compare this to what's visible in the image. And you can see that kind of, although it's distant and it's hard to see, you can see that kind of shape is the same. So that helps us narrow down the potential locations, but that doesn't tell us exactly where it was taken. It's a wide area that that photograph could have been taken from. So we start looking for other clues. So what's interesting here is you can see the top of the roof. It's got this wooden overhang that's visible. You can also see a railing as well. And that doesn't give us too much information for now, but we have to start narrowing down where this could be. So we know they're a family. They're probably in a new home. So this is probably the railings on a new home. So we go back to the area we're looking at. And this is the area in question. There's 3 possible locations it could be. So the first location is here. It's Pocklewood Park, I think, or Pond. And it's an industrial area, so it couldn't be there. Here you would see the boats in the foreground on the video, so it's likely going to be in this area, which is an area of residential homes. And how do we know this? Where we can see swimming pools, cars parked in driveways. So where can we find images of these houses? Well, there's not many geotagged photographs. There's nothing on Google Street View. So I started looking up local estate agents and Airbnbs. And it turned out a lot of these houses have been sold recently. And one of the houses I found was this one. And by looking through the photographs that were posted online, I could start seeing matches. So you can see the railing is very similar. And this was significant because all the houses in that area that I saw had different railings. And they had different styles. They were all architecturally unique from what I could see. And there was another image. And we can actually see here from the same house, the same style of roof. But the problem was, when I was looking through all the photographs, none of them actually matched with what I was seeing in the video. So I looked at the estate agent's image, and then I did a zoom in and had a look at these houses. So the house on the left-hand side is the one that was in that advert. And what I noticed is the house just to the right of it is identical. Apart from the additional swimming pool, the design of the house on the top at least looks the same, apart from the color. And it turns out, when we phoned up the estate agents, he had just sold the house to a family from Britain who had just moved in and been evacuated. And it was the same family that had gone missing. And using that video, we were able to get their family in contact back with their family in home. So another example is when we looked into white nationalists in Charlottesville. So there was this very well-known photograph of a group of men attacking a teenager. And we wanted to identify who these people were. So there was a whole community of people looking into this, and they still do, actually. So some of these people are identified, but we were looking at this one person in particular. So what we did, first of all, is we went through social media, YouTube, every single source we could find of videos and photographs of the event. And we found this image. And this shows a guy who's wearing the same kind of plaid shirt. Although the stickers on the helmet are unclear, you can see it's a kind of customized helmet. The colors and the shapes are in the right locations. So it's highly probable it's the same person. So you can see the shirt. And we managed to find some other images of him as well. There we go. So this is another photograph of him, but how do we know it's him? Well, we start looking at details. One thing you should always do when you're trying to match two faces together is look for marks that are unique. So in this case, he has these moles or birthmarks all over his neck, and they're in exactly the same pattern. So you can be sure this is the same person, but there's other little details as well. You can see this, his ear shape's the same. He's also got a chain around his neck as well that's the same. So we can be sure this is the same person in the photographs. But that doesn't tell us who he is. That just tells us it's the same person. So what we do is, if we don't know who he is, we look at his digital community. So we start looking at the people around him. Who are these people? If you're going to go to a kind of Nazi march, are you going to go with your friends? That's the question we're asking. So fortunately for us, someone else had already identified those two people. And we could see from the photographs they were used, they had social media profiles. So we took those social media profiles and we looked them up. Now, the first guy was this guy, Jacob Dix. He had lots of photographs, so he was easy to identify using his photographs. Another guy was Ryan Martin. He had very distinct neck tattoos aside from everything else, so that was easy. The problem is Ryan had his friends list closed, so we couldn't see who his friends were. But Jacob didn't have his friends list closed, and we could see he was friends with Ryan. So we started searching through his friends list to see if he was friends with anyone else who was interesting. And eventually we came across this guy, Daniel Borden, as he called himself. And he had a public friends list, and we could see he was friends with Jacob, and he was also friends with Ryan. And we could see in the photographs he had on his on the site that he was clearly the same person, as we could see here. And we can see the same marks on his necks again. So using this, by exploring his digital community, we were able to identify who he actually was. So by you piecing all these clues together, we were able to get a name. So who was he? He was Daniel Borden, and this is what he looked like before, and this is what he looks like now, waiting for sentencing after being arrested for attacking that person. So that's the work of Bellingcat. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So And please take a seat. And to you to know that, of course, Bellingcat isn't gone. Like he's waiting for you if you have any questions, or also if you have input or aspects that you want to share, or also critics. I think you're open to everything. Just please be patient, for there are still our awards of distinction, which I want to introduce you. And one is ARM, Anti-Racist Movement, and Farah Salka, very welcome. I want to give you a little insight into the jury's decision, why we think you're so important. So ARM was founded in 2010 as a direct, let's say, call it an answer, when migrant domestic workers weren't allowed into a bath. And so thanks to smartphones, people were able to film that incident. And this was kind of, I think, the birth of your movement that's still here. For the jury, it was, as we write it down, is that racism has different expressions and manifestations. In context of increasing migration and displacement and refugees, there is a global trend of racist identitarian discourses that challenge our living together. So these trends are especially pressing in some contexts, and local responses that address local challenges in strategic, creative ways are very valuable. So ARM Lebanon is a great example to the jury of grassroots countering of racist trends and promoting migrant rights in a very difficult context. So very welcome, and I'm very much looking forward to your talk.
Somebody forgot his laptop.
It's always the part to raise the excitement of what's going to happen.
So, hello, my name is Farah, and I'm coming from Beirut, Lebanon. I work on organizing with migrant workers, migrant communities, and mostly migrant domestic workers. Is it? Perfect, okay. So I'm going to introduce you quickly to two organizations that I serve on the board of, which are super cool organizations that I think it would be important to mention them quickly. First of all, this is a quick photo of my cat. He's usually part of all my presentations. Second of all, I want to quickly mention the A Project, which is a local human rights organization in Beirut as well, that works on gender and sexuality via affirmative sex-positive approach. The A Project stands for Agency, Autonomy, and Alternatives for Women and Trans Folks in Lebanon, and it runs the only sexuality hotline in Lebanon. So I'm very proud of this organization. The other organization is Mama Cash, which is based in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam. It's the oldest and most radical and political, in my opinion, women's fund in the world that is serving and funding women's groups all over that are doing work on the margins, that are very invisible to other donors, and that are doing great work with women, girls, and trans folks as well. So now a bit of context on Lebanon for those who don't know. Lebanon is a very small country in the Middle East. Capital is Beirut. Total population is maximum 4 million to 5 million people. The number of migrant domestic workers, I'm not speaking migrant workers, I'm not speaking refugees, I'm not speaking asylum seekers, I'm just speaking migrant domestic workers, is more than 300,000. So we're talking around 8% of the population is people who are coming from all over the world to come and serve Lebanese people in the most horrible conditions. These are a few photos of the situation. Migrant domestic workers in Lebanon are governed by something called the kafala system, the sponsorship system, which is a horrible system that is the root of all evil in terms of the treatment that they get in the country. These photos are very common place photos that we get. We get daily photos from people documenting things, which has been on the rise since we started, which is great, because now it's not just us documenting, but other people as well. People standing on windows like this without any protection is a very normal scene. And this is a very normalized way to name agencies that get these women from different parts of Asia and Africa to Lebanon. So yes, madam, and other sorts of names is a very normal situation. So quickly, these are also some caricatures. So quickly, the anti-racism movement is a grassroots movement created by activists in Lebanon in collaboration with migrant community leaders and activists, migrant activists that have been in Lebanon for 20, 30 years, even before we were born. Together, we work on documenting, investigating, exposing, and fighting racist practices through multiple initiatives and campaigns. The anti-racism movement runs 3 migrant community centers, which are spaces that are open for migrant workers to come use in different sorts. The MCCs are free and safe spaces tailored to migrant workers and evolving around their needs, where they work together, access information, resources, and assistance. The MCCs also serve as a hub where initiatives are launched, space to have celebrations, get-togethers, and a casual space for people to spend time with each other. So the main goal of the MCC is to make meaningful improvements in the quality of life of migrant workers in Lebanon and in their capacity to self-advocate. The main theory of, our theory of change at the anti-racism movement, which is the organization that is managing the centers, shifts the positionality of migrant workers from passive, weak, vulnerable people that can only be saved by NGOs to communities that are strong enough. We work together on changing the system. Us as Lebanese people and local community having a responsibility to change the horrendous things that happen in our name in Lebanon, and migrant workers who have voices and have agency and have the ability to lead in their own struggles with the support of local activists, of course. So these are a few photos of the different activities that happen at the centers, from classes to workshops to lots of protests. There's one very important specific protest that happens every year, which is a protest that happens on May 1, on Workers' Day, basically. And it's very important symbolically, because Lebanon is one of the main, if not the only, city in the region, Beirut specifically, where this day there are thousands of workers on the streets. These are a few of the different banners that have been held in the last 10 years that we've organized this together. So people go down to the streets and they chant against slavery and modern day slavery and the sponsorship system and whatnot. And it's a very beautiful scene because it's loud, it's very diverse. You know, there are so many flags, there are so many statements, there are so many beautiful faces, activists that have been there for ages. And that risk deportation and risk their status every single day because they do the work that they do under the very vulnerable status of being a domestic worker in Lebanon. So I thought it would be nice to see all these photos to remind us that there are different ways of us working with refugees and migrant communities in our countries, and it's not just always the saving model that most people tend to use. So basically, the struggle we have in our country is not just the struggle against the government and the million things that we need to do with them, but it's also a struggle against the different NGOs that we work with and the very problematic ways that they use. These are a few of the posters for the Workers' Day events. This was this year. We actually celebrated it on Domestic Workers' Day, not Workers' Day, because we had elections. One very pertinent issue in Lebanon is the issue of punishing workers for not having papers, and the whole system that is run in Lebanon forces you not to have papers. It's either freedom or legality. So it's the thing that people are divided in. I don't think I have much time, but I'd like to quick.
Take your time, please.
Okay, thank you. I will just run to a very fast video that I'd like us to see. But I mean, first of all, I mean this is a very powerful, very sad, very intense photo that was taken this year in June 2018. So basically, I mentioned this march that there are thousands of people, Lebanese activists, people who care. There are not a lot of them these days, and migrant activists on the streets. And we roam in various residential areas. Of course, we change the route every year. And obviously, we pass through next to all these balconies where there are lots of workers that are not allowed a day off and that are not allowed out and that see all their, people from their countries on the streets, and they are stuck up on the balconies. So this was a photo that people took of a woman that was saying hi at first, most likely a domestic worker, and then she had to tear up because of the obvious situation. These are other small campaigns here and there that we've also done, and it's always, as much as possible, migrant workers representing themselves. Now we're going to see a very quick testimonial video by Christelle, who was part of the MCC for a very long time, but now she has gone back home. She did her share of 3 years in Lebanon, and she doesn't think she will ever come back. So how does this play?
Je m'appelle Christelle Nathalie. Je viens du Cameroun, de la ville de Douala. Et je suis au Liban environ, ça fait 5 ans, je peux dire. Nous avons plusieurs choses qui nous poussent à venir, mais principalement pour avoir une meilleure vie. En bref, c'est pour de l'argent, pour avoir de l'argent pour pouvoir subvenir à nos besoins, à nous, d'autres pour des familles. Parce qu'on nous promet souvent du meilleur ici, quand il faut venir ici. C'était vraiment pas ce à quoi je pensais. C'était vraiment différent de ce que je pensais. Quand tu vas aller dans un autre pays, quand tu arrives à l'aéroport, on te prend comme tout le monde. On te respecte, tu as des droits, on t'accueille normalement. Mais ici, quand tu arrives à l'aéroport, déjà, on te prend ton passeport. C'est ton passeport à toi, c'est toi qui l'as fait dans ton pays. Ils n'ont pas le droit de te le prendre. Et ils ont une chambre. Cette chambre, elle existe toujours à l'aéroport. Je ne sais pas comment ça s'appelle. On te fout dans cette chambre, tu vas trouver plein de filles à l'intérieur de différents pays. Et on te demande d'attendre dans cette salle. Et tu vas attendre. On va te dire jusqu'à ce que tes employés viennent. Déjà, tu vois que ta vie, tu n'auras plus de liberté à toi. Tu n'auras pas une vie privée, je veux dire. Après 1 semaine, tu regrettes pourquoi tu es venu. Tu veux même déjà repartir. Mais c'est impossible. Il faut que tu finisses le contrat. Quand je parle du contrat, quand tu arrives, on te dit ton contrat c'est 3 ans. Et même fois, la première fois où je suis allée signer mon contrat, c'était en arabe, rédigé en arabe. Moi j'ai posé la question à ce monsieur ce jour. Qu'est-ce qui est écrit là? Il arrive, il me dit depuis que les filles viennent au Liban, c'est la première fois que quelqu'un me demande qu'est-ce qui est écrit. Et après la madame s'était fâchée dans la voiture. Pourquoi tu as demandé ça et tout? J'ai dit oui. On ne va pas signer, je ne peux pas signer mon arrêt de mort. Qu'est-ce que je peux signer quelque chose qui dit là-bas qu'on va me couper la tête après, je suis d'accord. Je ne peux pas savoir. Ce pays est bilingue. Faites des contrats avec plusieurs langues. Au moins, on saura de quoi, qu'est-ce qu'on signe. Quand tu as des problèmes dans une maison, on va te dire tu n'as pas fini ton contrat. Tant que tu ne finis pas ton contrat, tu ne peux pas bouger. On prend ton passeport, tu ne peux pas partir, tu ne peux pas rentrer. Voilà pourquoi il y a plusieurs filles qui fuient. Moi, je ne conseillerais jamais à une fille de fuir la maison. Parce que déjà, quand tu es dehors, c'est plus pire. Tu ne peux pas rentrer, tu n'as pas tes papiers. C'est vraiment difficile. Moi, j'ai travaillé quand je suis arrivée pour ma première fois dans une maison. Cette dame m'a dit ici, je ne te donne pas ton salaire tous les mois. Je vais te donner chaque 3 mois. Je lui ai dit, j'ai une famille. Si je suis venue ici, c'est pour travailler, pour envoyer à ma famille. Si vous gardez mon salaire pendant 4 mois, comment est-ce qu'ils vivent là-bas? Vous n'avez pas le droit de garder mon salaire. Si je travaille, chaque fin du mois, vous devez me donner mon salaire. J'ai posé une question une fois pendant la marche que nous avons fait. Si est-ce qu'un Libanais peut vivre avec $250 le mois ou $200 le mois? J'ai posé cette question. Parce que j'en connais avec $250 qui s'achètent une jaquette. Mais toi, tu travailles du 1er au 31 du mois et tu as $200. C'est quoi ce salaire qu'ils donnent aux filles? Et pour que ça change, ce sont même nos gouvernements, nous, dans les pays, dans nos pays, qui feront à ce que ça change. Parce que maintenant, il y a des pays qui se sont révoltés, comme les Philippines. Ils se sont vraiment révoltés. Tu ne peux plus prendre une fille philippine maintenant, tu lui donnes $200, c'est impossible. J'aimerais vraiment que les Libanais changent leur mentalité, leur façon de voir. Nous sommes des humains. Il n'y a pas de droit de l'homme ici au Liban. Nous sommes comme des esclaves. Pas de sortie, tu n'as pas le droit de parler. Je ne vois pas un Libanais qui va se séparer de sa famille pendant 3 ans et aller toucher ce salaire qu'ils donnent aux filles ici. Ils savent combien c'est. Ils sont en Afrique, ils vivent bien dans nos pays. Moi, ça me fend le cœur chaque fois quand j'entends qu'une fille s'est suicidée. J'imagine un peu son parent dans son pays. Est-ce qu'ils imaginent un peu la douleur de ces mamans dans les pays? Tu ne peux pas faire 7 jours sur 7 dans une maison enfermée. Tu perds ta jeunesse, tu perds ta liberté. Quand tu fais 3 ans dans une maison, ces 3 ans qui sont passés, qu'est-ce que j'ai fait? J'ai passé mes 3 ans à être enfermée. Ces filles, elles ont besoin d'autre chose. Qu'ils soient plus aimables. Pas à dicter, tu manges ça, tu manges pas ça. Lève-toi, assieds-toi, non. Qu'ils arrêtent de faire toutes ces atrocités qu'ils font à ces filles. Déjà, j'aime quand je viens, peut-être quand je sors les dimanches, que je me retrouve avec d'autres personnes qui sont les autres immigrés aussi, comme moi, quand nous nous retrouvons, comme par exemple ici à MCC. Tu oublies au moins que tu travailles dans une maison. Là, tu te retrouves un peu en famille. Donc pour celles qui veulent venir, si elles viennent ici, qu'elles savent que c'est difficile. Tu seras traité comme un esclave. Tu ne peux pas les empêcher de venir parce que chaque famille, chaque personne a sa situation. Il y a des situations qui sont difficiles. Toutes les familles, toutes les maisons ne sont pas mauvaises. Pour ça, il y a des familles qui sont bien. Quand tu vas voir une fille qui a fait 10 ans dans une maison, elle te dit comment la dame l'a pris comme sa fille. J'en connais aussi des témoignages comme ça. Mais toi qui n'as pas le courage de vivre ça, ne viens pas. Malgré que tu n'as pas assez d'argent pour vivre, mais au moins, tu as la paix. Tu restes avec ta famille, tu vois les gens que tu aimes. Personne ne te maltraite, personne ne te persécute. C'est déplorable ça. Et je souhaite vraiment que ça change.
Okay, so this is one story out of so many others, and through the day-to-day management of the 3 migrant community centers, there's a wealth of knowledge and content out there from the stories of the hundreds of workers that come there. So this is why one of ARM's main focuses is doing online advocacy by producing and disseminating multimedia on narratives of all these migrant women and domestic workers, and amplifying their voices, especially the voices of all these people doing different forms of resistance against modern-day slavery in Lebanon. So it's us and them doing this together. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I already have so many questions to both of you, and I hope you have as well. But before that, I'm so happy to announce Gov0 as the other ones who won our award of distinction. I truly love you guys. It's like, to me, it was also, it has this, everything a fairy tale story needs in times like this. Like, it started with a peaceful revolution when this perfectly matches the motto, I think, of Ars Electronica for you guys as well, perhaps. When students said, like, we think there's an error within the government, and you did the sunflower movement, and peacefully made the government resign and basically said, let's build a new one with the digital tools we have to make the government and the citizens work better and closer together with every positive aspect of digitalization. So we're talking about hackers, activists, and civilians working together with words you probably might have heard already, because a great utopia lied on terms as liquid democracy, for example, which pirates parties tried out. And you guys just did that, and you have implemented liquid democracy in Taiwan now, and I'm really looking forward to hear how that works. And as in the talks before, they were discussing the terms of error, and I think it's like not so much of an error, but learn from experience. And since you are a manifestation in the world, in a country where many of the utopia, what digitalization can do when it comes to democracy and leveling it up to a next step, I'm really more than curious to hear more about that. So please welcome Bess and Chihhao Yu.
If you need audio.
Yeah, we don't need audio. Thank you. All right, let's see.
Hello, I'm Bess from Taiwan, and I'm a GovZero's contributor, but I'm also a staff of my team, which is called GovZero Zhozong. So the Zhozong is a team that organizes hackathon and infothon, and we have a civic tech prototype grant. So now I'm give a little brief to how to our organizing, how we can do in the GovZero. So okay, so GovZero is a decentralized community with a lot of people and projects. So it's not a singular organization. There are no spokesperson and no committee and no singular leadership. So we do our own things that we want to do. So our common values are hands-on and open source and care of the others and the public goods. A favorite saying among many contributors is do not ask why nobody do this, and you are nobody. So we do the things by ourselves. So yeah. So okay, so GovZero was started in 2012 and by a group of friends, and they say they were angry at the government advertisement because the advertisement telling them not to question government's new economic plans. So they made the first project of GovZero is a central government project visualization tool, and then they won 50,000 new Taiwanese dollars from the corporate hacking event, and they decided to use the money to buy food and host the first hackathon. So that's how GovZero started that. And since then, many projects are born out of big and small GovZero hackathons, and people coding on their own afterward while chatting on IRC and Slack. The community has since grown from a group of friends to network of contributors, both online and offline. And out of many projects that identified themselves as part of GovZero. And one major thing in GovZero is using information technology to make government more open and accountable. So let's go talk about GovZero Zhozong, the team I am part of. As I mentioned, the GovZero hackathon was started by a group of friends. So this is our team, GovZero Zhozong. So when the group is established, and you can see CL Gao and IPA took over most of the thing of hosting a hackathon. Since there were more and more people joining after 2014, the year led Sunflower movement. So they decided to establish the Zhousong group to organize the GovZero hackathon in 2015. And then we have InfoZone and Civic prototype program in 2016. So GovZero hackathon is very intensive event. We host a hackathon every 2 months and provide a lot of pizza and fried chicken. And 100 people join us for hacking each time. And now we are going to have our 30-second hackathon. Yeah. So for a better hacking experience, we need to improve our website, a server, a sign-up system, chatbot, or anything in our community. So we have InfoZone to grow up these things. So it's a small hackathon that focuses our infrastructure. And as you can see on the slides, we have a platform surveys to hold lots of GovZero's projects, including website and database. And we have, you can see the hack folder, the left side. And to put all the documents or everything together, it could be used for emergency situation. Like earthquake or typhoons, when you need to know huge information, but it's too difficult to build up a website immediately. So you can just put a link or some text on the Google slidesheet, and it becomes a hack folder, as you can see. Yeah. So. Or if you want to occupy somewhere, you need to know where you could join. So you can put a lot of information on it. And now, as a member of GovZero Zhousong, I put much effort on Civic prototype program. And I don't know how you see GovZero, but what is GovZero in Taiwan? In Taiwan, many Taiwanese link us well with politics issues, but including me before I joined the GovZero. And when I joined the GovZero Zhousong, I was realized GovZero want to put as much as possible the issues in this community. So. So I don't know about how to coding, but I can maybe just take a photo, and as you can see in the middle photo, and you can see I can just take a photo, and I can take a photo in museum, and thanks to the technology and the Taiwan National Treasure. It's an app, and it's optical character recognition system, and we can see all of the history or text on these papers. So we just need to take a photo, and so we know. So we can know about Taiwanese history. So that we can know how we look at it and why we are here and why we have no country now. So you can see the history to know why we are looking at. Yeah. So I think we need to find our culture or style that's not just politics issues. So I want to say the civic tech is not easy to us, but it must be easy to people, and because civic tech is tech for civilization. Okay, so that's my part. So I'm turn to Chihhao.
Right. Hi. I'm Chihhao. Yeah. Thanks. Like Bess said, that in GovZero there are no representatives. So as part of the nobody, so representation is what what I'm talking today. Because we're at an art award and representation is very important as what I'm doing right now. So part of the, oh great, I didn't know that, awesome. So because of our model of decentralized collaboration, no one represents us. This policy, this sort of policy, this rough consensus was built when during the 2014 March 18 uprising in Taiwan, so-called Sunflower Movement, when a lot of GovZero contributor with experiences from previous social movements, they ran power line and internet cables and the Wi-Fi station at sites of protest, so that everyone can stay connected, so that events inside the occupied area and outside could be live streamed. So because of the movement was such a big event in Taiwanese politics and throughout social sort of media, everyone got to know that there's this secret weird group that's called GovZero, right, with a really weird name. And you know us as GovZero, G0V, but in Mandarin, in Taiwanese Mandarin, it literally means government at 0 hour. So it's like resetting government a little bit. And it sounds, in Taiwanese, sounds like temporary government. So our mainstream media started to report that the student movement are starting this temporary government to replace our government. So fake news, right? But that was when a lot of us got to know what GovZero was, and a lot of us starting to ask, like, hey, are you in GovZero? Hey, what is GovZero? So that's when the issue of representation first started for those who identified as GovZero contributors. So a lot of us started to ask these questions like, should we adopt a unified title among all of us? Should we call ourselves contributors, participant, members, or any of those titles? And we started to invent our own words as well. And we started asking, like, should we go on television to talk about what GovZero is? And how do we talk about what GovZero is when there's nobody who can represent all of us? So that's a really crazy discussion and like really abstract. And all of these are happening, on the streets when people are protesting, and also on Hackpad, which is a shared document platform service that's sort of like Google Doc, but none of the documents has owners. So, fast forward. Can we fast forward? Yeah, I guess so. In 2015, so now in the art sort of area, in 2015, GovZero was first, to my knowledge, first invited to an art exhibition in Taipei called Taipei Digital Art Festival in 2015. The curators and the director of the festival was very excited about they having invited GovZero into the festival, and they were saying that what GovZero was doing was very important, and they wanted us to feature what we're doing in an exhibition. So I was a contributor to that project, and I made a plan to make an exhibition space that's sort of maybe half size of this room. So the exhibition space will be an open space. And an open space, the plan was to make half the space event space. So we had hackathons. So maybe if we, yeah, totally. So hackathons, discussion groups, social experiments like this one is a free market inside the art exhibition. So people are coming and going. We had event schedules in the open space. And the other half of the sort of the exhibition space was a physical representation of all the people and the projects. So this is probably a better picture to see. We sort of hung all the projects as like boards, in the physical space, and then presented links between the projects and the people with, I believe those are like plastic tubes, tiny ones. So that's our plan. Well, unfortunately, the curators and the directors wasn't having it because of how GovZero operated. We're a very open, collaborative community. All the plans and all the details are open to change, and everything is planned over shared documents. And the curators and the directors were like, we need a concrete plan that's not going to change after a deadline. We need a timetable of how do you implement those plans. So there was so we were presented with a clear conflict between what our idea of a community is and what their idea of what art is, or at least what an art exhibition should be. So at the end of the exhibition, if you could read Taiwanese or Mandarin, but if you couldn't, there was two conflicting values. One is open space, and the other one is sort of called a circle, an art circle, and a Taiwanese art circle. And then during the preparation of the exhibition, I was having a conflict with the director, and the director said something out of anger. He said, "Really shouldn't have invited an outsider." And to me, that's a problem, because if your exhibition is championing the communities, how their work are done, how collaborative they are, why can't you accept how they operate? So that's a question for me. So fast forward again to this year, we were invited to come to Ars Electronica, to submit to Ars Electronica. And thank you for the juries. We were awarded an award of distinction, right? So I'm again a contributor of this project, how to present GovZero without claiming that I'm representing everyone. So, really difficult. I have something to show up there. Let's see, great. So, it is difficult for me, personally. Because I feel like our community is so decentralized, and art, or at least the art education that I got, or the art that I saw, is fairly authoritarian. Meaning it's not oppressive, but it means that it has certain authors to art pieces, right? But you feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. So it's very difficult. And to me, community is all about making things, right? And it's very complex, and we often have failures. A lot of our projects are not finished. A lot of our projects doesn't work after a year or two. We all have doubts about how it's gonna work. Is it going to work? Is it going to change our politics for the better? We're not sure. So it's definitely not a utopia in Taiwan. But I think like the spirit is that every one of us is trying our best to do what we can. And that's very different when, that's a very different sort of feeling as an insider of the community. But when you go out and you have to present your community to other people at art awards, at conferences, at invited speeches, you often have to talk simplistically. You often have to represent yourself in a successful way, in an impactful way. So that's also very difficult for me. And to me, I feel I am a firm believer of self-empowerment. So I feel like a lot of our information is online, and I don't have to represent the community for you. You can definitely check it out, govzero.tw, right? Or you can also join us in Slack and talk to participant or contributors to GovZero. So there's a statement, GovZero is a civic tech community in Taiwan. But really, like, are there more? I'm really sure that there's more. Do we have time to find out? We don't know. And also, civic tech is such a Western term. Who defined the term that we use? It's also a question. How much time do I have? How much time do you want to get? Lastly, I want to mention the changes since Gov0 started. I'll be very quick, I think. So that was the difficult part. This is the easy part. So change. Since 2012, there was regionally there was the 318 movement, aka Sunflower Movement in Taiwan, and then in September there's the Umbrella Revolution in Hong Kong, right? So it seems like East Asia is embracing a new value of openness and transparency. So our politicians are gladly, jumping on a board. And since then, in 2014, we, the Taipei citizens, I live in Taipei, the capital city of Taiwan. We elected a non-partisan candidate, Dr. Ko Wen-je, right here, to be the mayor of our capital city, which is unprecedented. Usually, partisan candidates get elected in Taiwan. We have two major parties, one blue, one green. The blue one is sort of the nationalist party, in a way. They're called the Chinese Nationalist Party. And the green one is called Democratic Progressive Party, which used to be the opposition, right now is the ruling party. In 2016, we also elected a brand new Congress. This time, the opposition takes the majority. And you will see this photo is the inauguration of the president of Legislative Yuan, which is our Congress, our National Congress. And part of the declaration of the new president is that this Congress is going to be the Congress of the people. And then, in the same time, we also elected a new president, female, unprecedented in our national history, if we have a nation, Dr. Tsai Ing-wen. And then, one of the earliest Gov0 contributor, Audrey Tang, as we call her, AU, she was appointed to be the digital minister of Taiwan. So all of these changes inside government. And also we have, in the civil society, we have the establishment and the growth of Open Culture Foundation, which was founded in 2014. And then Gov0 Zhou Song on the top is one of the projects that's supported by the foundation, which Bess is a part of. And then the foundation also has a big program called International Exchange, and then it also supports the Gov0 Summit, and then also different open source communities in Taiwan. So the foundation is clearly a hub of a lot of the support work, or yeah. So those are the changes that I wanted to share with you right now. And then at the very end, this is sort of like a draft that me and Bess were doing, 2 days before this talk, and we're thinking about like how does the community look like right now, and it's complicated. But don't write a blog post and say this is what Gov0 is. Please don't do that. This is a draft, okay? And then there's a warning in it that says this is not to scale, and this is a personal observation. All right. So I'd like to lastly come back to this statement. To me, this is not as simple as a civic tech community that we use technology to make government more open and transparent. To me, this is a part of a civic practice that every one of us in Taiwan is practicing how to be a citizen. That's right. And to me, this is a part of a nation-building movement, that we're finding our culture, we're finding our identity, we're building our new nation. And lastly, I know I've said lastly a lot of times, but this is where Taiwan is, okay? This is tiny, and our neighbor is China, which is a bully. And right, so if you want to know more about Gov0, ask questions, like any questions that are non-dumb questions. And then if you want to chat with more than me and Bess, go to join.gov0.today, and then you invite yourself. And then there's a channel called Zero Art that we're in, and then these are our handles. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. You forgot something, though, and that's we have you here, so we can ask you questions or give you input right now as well. I got the role of the bad guy, obviously, because I'm the one who always has to check on the time. So I do have questions, of course, but I want, if somebody in the audience has something he or she wants to mention, has a question or has an input to do, I would ask you to do so, since we only have 15 minutes left, and of course I want you to be the first one, though. Is there any input? Actually, the light is blending me so much that I wouldn't have seen it if someone would have raised their hand, so please.
Yeah, that was quite impressive. I would like to know how the liquid democracy works in practice.
So,
All right.
take it to the front.
Okay. So, there was a GovZero project called vTaiwan. It was proposed by a former minister. She came to a GovZero hackathon and proposed an online platform that we can all come together and discuss laws that's related to digital sphere, how government functions in digital sphere. And vTaiwan became a semi-official process in Taiwan that a lot of the laws, before they become law, they have to go through this phase of public deliberation. And I think that's the closest thing that I can think of in terms of the implementation of liquid democracy in Taiwan. We also have a government platform called Join. It's very simple, Join. So anyone can propose something on the website, and then the website's administrator will assign a bureau or a government agency that has to reply to the issue within, if I'm not mistaken, 30 days. And then there will be a either to go forward into discussions or not, like a decision, like a government decision. And if the topic is going into deliberation, there will be a multi-stakeholder meeting hosted by the government, and then the office of the digital minister. The office name is called PDIS, Public Digital Innovation Space. That office has facilitators that will facilitate the to map out the issue and to identify stakeholders and then invite them to meetings. I think that's the most I can tell you about. If you want to know about vTaiwan or Join or PDIS, please come to GovZero Slack and ask them respectively. Yeah. Do you have anything to add, Bess? Cool. Feel free to follow up. I'm sorry, maybe I'm not answering.
I was always interested because, you know, the idea of I'm nobody, we the community, I heard that before within the subculture of Anonymous, and I was just wondering all the time if you took this aspect of how we see each other as some sort of inspiration.
From what I know, Anonymous, the policy of Anonymous is that everyone can claim that they represent Anonymous. Mm-hmm. Like, the listener has to decide if they're truthful or not. I think it's not that simple in GovZero's case, because obviously we have faces. Mm-hmm.
No, but the nobody is like Terence Hill film would be also there, but this I am nobody could be seen in a positive way as we are many, but also in a negative. Who am I to talk? So
yeah, that's why like I'm feeling so difficult to sit here and talk about the community. We had, as I said, during the 318 movement, we had a very intense discussion, and we set up a group of rough consensus that's trying to suggest how members in that identified as Gov0 contributor can talk about Gov0 and themselves and their own involvement with Gov0. It's really difficult to phrase it correctly. But I do think that the phrases that we use are important, because when I listen, when I was referenced, when someone says the Gov0 team, I'm like, no, it's not a team. So I guess that's also part of my trigger. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So any more questions in the audience? Here.
Thank you. Really very, very interesting. V-Taiwan is something that has been known in the last 2 years, but Gov0 is not so well known. At least I have not heard about it, and Leopold. Now, my question is, the world is somewhat at a crossroads. With all these AI and all these digital technologies, we are tending towards becoming authoritarian systems, right? And then we have all these alternative movements which are trying to fight against that and thinking about new models of democracy using, despite the digital technologies, or using digital technologies. So and yesterday we had some scary talks at the conference at Ars Electronica, and one of the speakers, I spoke with the person later, and she said that she thinks we have 50-50 chances in the next 20 years that the world will go entirely authoritarian, or we will democratize, and at least in those democratic areas in the world. I mean, China would probably not go democratic in the next 20 years. So how do you connect yourself to these global movements? Are you in touch with these alternative movements that's going on around the world, which are trying to design new kinds of political, digital, collaborative or cooperativist kind of models? Are you in touch with the others?
When you say you mean Gov0 or myself? I am. I'm sure a lot of us are. But because of lack of time, what I didn't say is that because of all the political changes in Taiwan, to be completely honest, there's a, how do you say? So the participation is like going down because of the political changes there. And also people get tired, after trying really hard to squeeze out time from their day job, to code at night alone, with only like Slack chat that supports each other. It's really difficult. Taiwan is a very, manufacturer-based economy still. And a lot of people, engineers, let's just say, I'm a software engineer. A lot of us work very long hour. We have very little leisure time. So, and our wages are fairly low comparing to, comparing to something. we feel like it's low. I feel like it's low, sorry, misrepresentation. So with the fall of participation and people's sort of free time, it's very difficult for new initiatives to begin, or it's very difficult to maintain own initiatives and projects. And that's what a lot of our core contributors are trying to do, is to find new ways to continue our work. I'm sure Bess wants to say something about this, right?
I say most of the participants in Gov0 are volunteers. So it's a very difficult to push volunteers to do a lot of things because it's such huge problem in Taiwan or worldwide. So that's why we have a lot of projects. So we have Gov0 Joe Zone to hire such as full-time staff like me to maintain most of things that nobody wants to do. So I need to do some of things that we can
we can push volunteers to do. So that's why we started to have a foundation and some full-time staff. Yeah.
I want to go on a bit to Mr. Higgins and Bellingcat, because when I wrote on Twitter that I was looking forward to today's talk, and there was sudden reactions to Bellingcat where I thought like, wow, that works. and I thought like I passed those questions on. For one question was that you also have like crowdfunding, which is anonymous, and like you are so quick sometimes in finding correlations and some would call it doxing, or finding facts that how much is it. Very many people were speculating that it must be a lot of money you need to be able to do such work in such a quick time. And the other question I'm very famous for putting two questions in one, forgive me, but I want to place it here as well, is when it comes to, is this picture or this information true or is it false, how can you make sure that someone doesn't follow up an idea because he or she thinks this must be the way I want to see the world? How can you provide objectivity to certain topics and aspects you are working on with so many people contributing?
So as to whether we need money to do our work, it's really nice to have the money to do our work, but we do have a lot of volunteers working for Bellingcat. We have been doing a lot of fundraising though, so I'm slowly hiring my volunteers because they're the best investigators I know. So over time, that's kind of been the main shift within Bellingcat, that we've gone from a mostly volunteer organization to now having 10 full-time members of staff. It's partly because I've kind of just figured this stuff out as I've gone along. There's never been an intention when I started blogging in 2012 to launch a website and hire staff. I was just doing it as a hobby. And I have no background in journalism or anything close to journalism or investigation, so I was just figuring it out. A good example of that is we've only just got funding to hire an editor for the website, which is, seeing we've been running for 4 years, is not great, but we kind of crowdsourced editing, which is a pretty terrible way of doing it. You end up with 10 people editing the same document and having 3 months of disagreements over the exact text. As for your other question, I think when it comes to our work, it sounds like you encountered, there are plenty of people waiting to criticize our work. And there's a whole community of people who, as Bellingcat has expanded and as my own work has expanded, who really haven't liked what we've been writing about. They tend to be kind of very pro-Russian or pro-Syrian, at least pro-Assad. And they've kind of really come together as a community of people who are really annoyed with us and will criticize us for the slightest, tiniest error we would make. So when we're writing our articles, we're very aware of that. We're also very aware of that. One thing we're very open to is when we actually coordinate through a Slack channel rather than actually sit in a room together. But if we're writing something, we'll kind of challenge each other's assumptions and we'll look at what someone said and say, how have you made that conclusion? And explain it to, can you explain it in a way that's actually clear? Because sometimes when you've done this kind of work a lot and you make these conclusions and figure this stuff out over time, you forget that you need to bring people along with you on the journey to the conclusion, not just come to the conclusion because you know how it works.
As a quick glance in the audience, is there any questions? No, then I can go on, that's cool. For what I would be interested in regarding the arm movement also is like, do you, it's like the same questions you got before, do you look over your borders, what happens in other countries? Do you connect to other countries where you say like, hey, there is the same problems, or even to come back to the motto a bit, here is some trial and error, what we found out, and see the broader aspect, since you raise some issues that are like worldwide of concern, or like some eyes are on topics you address. So how do you see yourself in the global context and the contribution? Here's the microphone.
So yeah, definitely the issue of racism is a global issue from cradle to grave that everybody's dealing with in their own different ways. But the anti-racism movement is working on dismantling racism, which is a big issue in Lebanon, but it's also focusing on working with migrant domestic workers, not just on the discrimination issues, but also on labor conditions, on dismantling the kafala system and replacing it with a fair migration system. And this is an issue that is common to the region that we're coming from. So the problem is, as I see it, is that it's more so notorious for Gulf countries. Like, people know that there's a kafala system and the sponsorship system and modern day slavery like habits and patterns and actions in the Gulf, but Lebanon does not have this reputation, and this is where the problem lies. Like, people are always coming to Lebanon and then they get shocked and know, oh my God, you have this here, we didn't imagine, this is not the reputation that Lebanon has, and this is what we're trying to change, that no, actually, you need to come to Lebanon and visit a little bit more than the two main streets where the nightlife is happening. So yeah, there's a lot of work to be done, and we do lots of networking and coordination with other groups in the region, but we need to remember that with all the problems that I've mentioned, Lebanon is one of the countries that has most active civil society in the region. So there's not really much formal groups to coordinate with in all the different countries. In the Gulf, for instance, or in Syria now, or in occupied Palestine, or. So we're coming from a very tense region on so many different levels. So in our case, we coordinate with activists, individual activists, more than organized groups, because they don't really exist much for now. But we are definitely part of different regional networks, et cetera, and we try to do work not just on the local level, but also on the regional level.
Okay, we have like 4 minutes left. As I said before, I'm the bad guy who always has to watch the time for the next things. There's another question. So I'm standing here because I don't have any other microphone, because otherwise the speaker don't... Here's it coming.
I have a question to Bellingcat. There is a movie in the cinema now, it's called The Cleaners. It's about a big task force at the Philippines, which are just cleaning the net for big companies. And there are a lot of discussions about upload filters and all that stuff. So I'm wondering how long your way of investigation will work, and how you will deal with this evolution.
Fortunately, there's a lot of material on the internet, fortunately for us. So even when people try and change up how they actually work, we just find something else to look at. A good example of this is when we were doing our MH17 investigation, a lot of the information we found out about the movements of the Buk missile launcher through Ukraine and Russia came from social media sites, from people filming convoys as they were traveling through Russia in particular. That led us to the brigade it came from, and the soldiers of the brigade were very, very active on social media, sharing photographs of each other, lots of photographs of them in uniform, so much so we were actually able to reconstruct the names and faces and ranks and positions of every single member of that brigade, just based off our social media profiles. As a reaction, the Russian government said, passed a law saying that it's now illegal for soldiers to share photographs of them during their service. But for one thing, that hasn't actually stopped them doing that, because we're still finding stuff like that. But we also find stuff on other topics, other ways around it, other information. So I don't think we'll ever lack material to find. And as some of this stuff gets taken away, new material gets put online, through different websites. We're, even over the time I've been doing it, over the past 5 or 6 years, the way in which kind of social media platforms have changed and apps have changed has made it easier and easier for people to share photographs and images and information publicly. And that's something we explore, and then we can kind of work through those networks. And with the attempts to create kind of fake information as well, one thing we always look at is how, it's never about one video or one photograph. It's always about, okay, if you have a video, where was the video posted? Who posted it? Who liked it? Who shared it? All that information. Okay, what can we see inside the video? Where was it filmed? Does it match the weather that was from another source? Does it fit with satellite imagery of the area? If a building is destroyed, was it destroyed on the date that it was supposed to have been filmed? All those details are there. So even when people try and hide information and fake it, you can still find stuff. And sometimes the fact that information has been removed is interesting in itself. And that makes you search for more information around that. Why has it been removed in the first place?
Thank you so much. Last glance in the round. Oh, whenever you say like, oh, we're over time, then the questions come.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I love that. Please.
I got a question like really last minute. I have a question for the anti-racism movement. You showed a really impressive movie. Thank you so much for your work. It's really marvelous. But seeing the pictures of these women on the balconies, I was thinking, do you also develop digital tools for these women to use on their phones, so you have they can join a community online? Or are they also not allowed phones?
Yeah, so one of the latest research showed that uncommonly, as we had thought before, that radio is one of the best means, traditional radio is one of the best means to reach domestic workers who are the domestic workers that are not leaving the houses. So what we're working on at the moment is that we, after a lot of give and take on so many different obstacles, a group of migrant domestic workers in the MCCs are working on radio programs that are both half Arabic, half different languages. So each episode would be catered to a certain community in order to reach out to the migrant domestic workers who can only access radio in the house after working hours or in the cars when they are with the employers. And they would be listening to information that the employers won't be able to get because it's not Arabic. So it will be sharing information on numbers, on support groups, on embassies, on ways to reach out to neighbors if you're in trouble, ways to throw out letters, like the different ways that we use for case management in emergency situations. So that's the main thing we're working on now in terms of reaching out to women in houses that are not being able to take their days off normally.
Thank you so much, and thank you for joining this discussion with us. I'm sure that you're open to questions if someone meets you and addresses a certain topic. Before we part, I just want to remind you that outside there is very many really cool projects we really loved. Please take your time to look at them, to look at some of the descriptions, as they're all really great. And thank you so much for taking your time and being here with us. It was my honor to be talking to you. Thank you so much. Bye.